Finnish paganism. It was the indigenous religion of Finland till it was Christianized, and this religion evolved from shamanism, and it shared several features including ancestor veneration. Now here's the thing. Finnish paganism, it was intertwined with nature, and they believed that the world came into being from the egg of a diving duck. Ukko was the name of the main god of this religion, and he was the sky and thunder god, and his feast day was held on April 4th, which was one of the most important dates in their calendar. This god shares some traits with the Norse god Thor, and one thing that they really had in common was that they both have a magic hammer. From there, let's look at Canaanite religion in at number 9. It was a religion of natives in the area between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. Now, for many years, the only evidence about the existence of this religion was that it was mentioned in the Torah and Bible, where there were constant battles and fights between their Israelite enemies. On the northern coast of Syria, several Canaanites were discovered between 1927 and 1937. It was a polytheistic religion, and they had many deities, in which El was the supreme god and Bel was the sun, the god of thunder. This religion was slowly eroded by Israelite conquest and religious pressure until it just completely vanished. The religion at number 8 is AKHENATEN. AKHENATEN was a monotheistic religion, and it was introduced by Pharaoh Akhenaten. Now, it was designated as the official religion of Egypt during the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten, and at first this religion was accepting of other Egyptian deities, but it later started to reject all of them. And because of this restrictive nature of this religion, many people, they just stuck to their older belief systems. So after the death of Akhenaten, well, his religion vanished along with him, as well as people just went back to their old beliefs after that. Next up, let's look at Minoan religion. It was a polytheistic religion with no name, and it was the religion of the inhabitants of Crete. Bull masks and horns were found during various excavations, which means that this religion was very much in touch with nature and animals. Now, there was no real centralized text for this, I guess, group of religions, and most of the information that we have gathered was derived from cave paintings and various archaeological discoveries on the island. Now, the main Minoan deity was a female nature goddess, and other than bulls, snakes, and double-headed axes played huge roles in their religious rites. The religion at number 6 leads us to Mithraism. This religion was brought to Europe from its Persian roots after the conquest of Alexander the Great. Now, extremely popular among Roman soldiers, this religion became one of the ancient Roman mystery cults. And this religious sect remained quite secretive. Now, Mithras was a Persian god of the sun, and no surviving text about Mithraism is found. Most of the knowledge that we have about this religion comes from the ruins of its temples. And these temples, they were made underground, and it's said that they were built cheaply. Number 5 leads us to the ultimate punishment in Rome. The Romans had a multitude of brutal ways to execute criminals and prisoners. Their methods were very cruel and merciless. However, the most horrifying method was reserved for those who committed the ultimate crime of patricide, taking the life of their own father. So whoever did that was first blindfolded, next they were beaten with rods before being bound and stuffed into a leather sack. Along with the perpetrator, the sack contained a snake, a dog, an ape, and a rooster, which were thrown into the nearest large body of water. There was also some interesting rules for adultery. Roman society had different rules depending on whether the husband or wife was caught cheating. For husbands, they had considerable freedom to have mistresses and visit brothels without any real judgment, as long as it wasn't excessive though. However, wives caught in the act of adultery faced severe consequences, and the husband was required to lock the wife and the alleged person that they cheated with in a room, and they had 20 hours to then go and gather witnesses. Then the husband had 3 days to gather evidence about the affair, including its duration, location, location and the lover's identity. Upon obtaining enough evidence, the husband was obligated to divorce his wife, and failure to divorce one's adulterous spouse would actually result in the charge of pimping. So if the husband desired revenge, he could end the life of the lover only if the lover was a slave or an adult worker who had no rights in Roman society. However, if the lover was a citizen, the husband had to involve his father-in-law, who had the authority to take the life of his daughter's lover regardless of his social status. The father might also even decide to end the life of his own daughter in that circumstance. Next up, at number 3, let's talk about the views on other faiths. Although being invaded by the Romans was not an ideal situation, they were relatively tolerant of indigenous belief systems and often assimilated them into their own religions. However, the Jews and early Christians were a different story. One of the reasons for this was that certain Jewish and Christian practices were considered gross by the Romans. Like, the Jewish practice of circumcision was very offensive to the Romans, who viewed it as a barbaric form of genital mutilation. And then when it came to certain early Christian groups, they were initially seen as a member of a cannibalistic blood cult by the Romans. They did not really understand the metaphorical meaning behind the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, eating and drinking it, you know, the stuff that happens during Holy Communion. Yeah, they took it literally. Coming up at number 2, there were body parts used in medicine. Roman doctors believed that consuming gladiator body parts could treat various ailments, with blood and liver being particularly effective against epilepsy. When the gladiator games were banned in 400 AD, the Romans turned to the blood of executed criminals for their remedies. But it doesn't end there. This fascination with gladiator parts extended to Roman beauty treatments. Dead skin cells of gladiators scraped from their baths were used in face creams also. Yeah, interesting. Rhinoplasty. And rhinoplasty is the most popular cosmetic surgery in Iran. The country of Iran is also known as the nose job capital of the world. And yes, more are done in Iran than South Korea and also in the United States. The next beauty standard brings us into Indonesia, and this is considered beautiful teeth filing, or mitata. And pretty much this is a necessity when it comes to spiritual well-being, as well as social well-being and physical appreciation of beauty. Now, it's said that the teeth filing is a ritual done to remove all negative qualities like uncontrollable anger, greed, hatred, and so on. Up next, tattoos. They're regarded as a sacred ritual in the country of New Zealand. And tomoko is a 1,000-year-old tradition where you use chisels and mallets to mark your skin. Now, these tattoos signify a female's beauty, strength, as well as fertility. But when these tattoos are put on males, it symbolizes that the male has become a man and now he's ready to take on responsibilities. Now, people in the country of Mauritania, they like ladies who are really plus size. So young women are commonly force-fed, but beyond just being force-fed, a lot of them go to like extreme ways of gaining weight, like using drugs to really start to stimulate their appetite so they can keep on eating. And the bigger you get, the more attractive you are. Now, have you ever heard of the term yaiba? Well, Japanese men love the yaiba smile on women. Yaiba, which translates literally as double tooth, really is a dental procedure where your upper canine teeth, they're actually capped either permanently or temporarily, and it gives the look of you having fangs. Now, this trend was made popular by the Japanese pop group AKB48. You'll find that in anime as well, the fanged teeth. Let's talk about strange festivals back in ancient Greece. They celebrated festivals as a way to connect with the supernatural world through various activities and rituals. These festivals were characterized by unique and often bizarre traditions, including things like athletic events, sacrifices, as well as musical performances, and also large feasts. One of these festivals in particular was known as Skirophorion, which was the final month of the Athenian calendar. And during this time, Athenians would offer animal sacrifices to Zeus Polius on Acropolis. And although they typically avoided sacrificing oxen, this occasion was actually considered special enough to permit using them as sacrificial animals. Following the sacrificer would stand trial, but would often shift the blame to the ox. As a result, the ox would be convicted and then drowned and then resurrected by stuffing it with straw. Well, resurrected. I use a term loosely, kind of like make it look like it's alive again. Number 4 leads us to weird contraception. In ancient Greece, women sought to prevent pregnancy by using olive and cedar oils that decreased the motility of their partner's seminal fluid, giving them more time to cleanse themselves after intercourse. To reduce the risk of conception, other contraceptive measures that were suggested by Greek gynecologists included sneezing. And as a matter of fact, one such gynecologist advised women to hold their breath and move away slightly to prevent the seminal fluid from being deposited too deeply inside of them. So when they backed away from their partner, what they would do afterwards would be to squat and induce sneezing, and this would expel any remaining fluid, and then they would thoroughly cleanse their lady parts. Coming in at number 3, this is an interesting one, tasting body fluids. In ancient Greece, medical practitioners believed that the human body was actually made up of different bodily fluids, each with a distinct taste and appearance. And to make an accurate diagnosis, doctors, they not only examined the patient's vomit and urine, but they would also taste the vomit and the urine. And in some cases, doctors would actually ask for urine samples, as healthy urine was believed to taste like fig juice. And any deviation from this taste was an indication of illness. Number 2 has to deal with ending infant life. Although taking the lives of infants was viewed as a heinous act and frowned upon in ancient Greece, well, exposure was a very common practice used to get rid of unwanted infants, particularly those with physical abnormalities, or in many cases, even female children. The act was not considered a crime though, since it was believed that the gods would intervene if they wanted to save the child. As you could imagine, typically the decision of whether to abandon the baby would fall on the patriarch of the family, and the ancient Greeks saw female infants as a financial burden because providing them with a dowry when they married would cost the family a lot. Also, since few job opportunities existed at that time for women, they were unlikely to contribute to the household income. Now, ending this episode off at number 1 is probably something that we would call predatory relationships, among other terms. Although we now consider preying on children to be a very reprehensible and unlawful act, the ancient Greeks not only engage in these type of relations with young boys, but they also celebrated them. Relationships between an adult man and a boy just approaching the age of puberty, or those over the age of puberty, were prevalent among the ancient Greeks. And the practice was actually viewed as a rite of passage for the young boys. Typically, the older man was the one that would initiate this relationship with a boy. And these relationships were not just about the physical acts, but they were also considered a form of mentorship and civic duty.